72% of Gen Z girls, women, 72% of them have their mental health condition, quote unquote, as a deeply important part of their identity.
Right.
And so young people are growing up, and I'll talk about what this was like for me because it was just so powerful. Being a 13-year-old girl who was confused and lost and insecure, wanting to feel like she belonged somewhere, to get kind of funneled into this. And I don't blame, my parents did the best they could.
What age did they put you on birth control?
That's a good question. Don't even get me started on birth control. I started birth control at 16. So I was on 5 psych drugs: lithium, Lamictal, Abilify, Effexor, and Ativan.
At the same time?
Same time.
That's crazy.
It was my last regimen back in 2010. 16 years of oral contraception. I don't even get me started on the pill.
At the best hospitals
I was on that
in
for
the country.
when I was 16 too, and it was kind of weird because I wasn't sexually active.
Oh yeah.
It was like this thing where just all the girls at my prep school were suddenly on birth control.
Totally. For me,
every girl at my school.
For me, it was for an eating disorder.
And this was all like affluent girls, just all of them.
Same with me. And so when you grow up in this, infused in this therapeutic landscape where you're like, as someone who was in therapy every week for a decade and a half, sometimes twice a week, and I'm just talking about myself, talking about my mind, talking about my thoughts, talking about my insecurities, my anger, my emotions, and it's just getting more and more reinforced that the most important thing in my life to focus on is myself and my feelings. I think when you think about that phenomenon in an individual and how it can shape their own reality, and then you pan out and you think about how many young adults grew up in therapy, privileging their emotions, and then you think, okay, it kind of makes sense. We're in this polarized, like Tim, you were saying, that people are literally living in different realities. Literally.
I mean, they constantly feel like a victim. You know, it's like I'm being oppressed by people out there. They're out to get me. Anything that they say is dangerous, and it's a lie. And look where it gets them. I don't think you can actually get anywhere really useful in life if you constantly feel like, you know, people are out to get me. They're you know, these people on the right and their ideas, and they're holding us down. Or even the mental health issue as well, where it's like, I have a brain disease. You know, my anxiety and depression is caused by my brain, and there's nothing that I can actually do to fix that problem. And unfortunately, that is a mentality. And I remember I was watching you on Tucker Carlson recently, Laura, and I think he said, you know, what would you have said to me if I said, hey, maybe, you know, medications aren't the answer, or there's not something? And I think you told him to F off or something like that. Like, it was so like deep.
Yeah, well, I cannot tell you how powerful it is to be taught to think that you have no agency or control over your life because your brain is defective. Like, I literally believed through these vital years when I was meant to be figuring out who I was as an adult in the world and like what I cared about and what my passions were, I was moving through every single day thinking, what's the point in really trying to grow or evolve as a person, because my brain is pathological. I have chemical imbalance in my brain that I'll never be able to get rid of. I can just manage it with pills. So like, what's the point in trying to become a more evolved person, to grow, to change? And I think that sense of disempowerment, that internalizing a mentally ill identity, you know, it stripped me of any belief that I could be an agent in my life. And I think, just to quickly, like, to Tim, to your question earlier, like, you know, I can't remember exactly how you framed it, but I'm really cautious to medicalize violence ever, to call it mental illness, because it really does absolve responsibility. The idea is, if you're mentally ill, you did this not because you're a bad person or a lazy person or, you know, an immoral person, because you're sick and it's not your fault. And so I think we need to be really cautious when we medicalize any kind of
did you see the DeCarlos Brown thing? They're like, oh, he has mental illness.
He's hurting, so he hurts.
It's like, does he not have a personality? Does he not have responsibility there? It's just like, he was in a crisis.
This is the corporate press, which we typically describe as more left-aligned, describes people as though they are animals without higher brain function. Mm-hmm. This man who made a decision to...
That's kind of true.
Exactly. So the way I've described it, as we've discussed on the show this past week, before the horrifying moments in Utah, was If you slathered yourself up in honey and peanut butter and carried some delicious trout into the woods, who is responsible for the attack on you?
The bear himself.
And that's the argument made by Democrats, which seems insane. We don't blame the bear for smelling food and chasing after it. However, when Irina Zarutska goes and sits on a train, not slathering herself up in anything, and is brutally murdered, they say, don't blame the murderer. He was hurting, so he hurt. It is absolutely insane. This was a man who made a choice, and they said, but he's unwell. And in fact,
he's so unwell.
This is important. Sorry. Van Jones attacked Charlie Kirk as a race monger for pointing out that this man attacked Irina Zarutska, a young white girl, and not anybody else on that who was sitting near him, who were black. And Van Jones said, to say it was because of race is just race mongering. After a decade of Van Jones himself, as well as many others in the corporate press, literally race mongering over instances that is no evidence that it was race motivated. And of course, then after this segment comes out, video emerges. I do believe the video was available, but became more prominent, in which it appears this man, DeCarlos, says, I got that white girl. Charlie wasn't wrong. And on national television, Van Jones singled out Charlie Kirk as a race monger spreading hate against black people. And I believe it was perhaps 2 days later that a man who was, according to I think it's a fair prediction that there was a correlation between the words of Van Jones, and I know some people might say that's just distasteful for me to say, but as the press conference revealed, they said that this suspect was at home with his family when mention of Charlie Kirk coming to their town was brought up, and how the family member said he was hateful. And why did they think that Charlie Kirk was hateful? He wasn't. Because of people like Van Jones lying about what Charlie Kirk was saying. And then sure enough, this guy went and killed Charlie Kirk.
You asked earlier, how do you snap someone out of a world where they believe there are orbs flying around them, recording them?
Well, let me put a tack in that. I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to clarify. When I say that, I'm referring specifically to a person that I know, but let's make sure we clarify the point. What do you say to a person who was raised to believe incorrectly that around every corner are angry white supremacists looking to murder trans and black people?
And there's my answer. You were saying it's people like Charlie Kirk that are the antidote to this kind of thing. Yes. People that can constantly, but there's also, you need to mitigate risk of susceptibility. So people that are susceptible to brainwash, somehow, whether it's dietary change, probably a lot of your intelligence starts in your gut. Getting people, like, less is more. Meditate. I mean, talk about meditation. Do it, because you'll notice it's a disembodiment yet a embodiment at the same moment. You sense things.
Let me try and translate that Ianism. The food you eat can destroy and damage your brain, but as much as I agree, and as we've cheered Maha on and talking about getting the garbage out of our foods, which does disrupt our hormones, does cause, in many instances, a variety of illnesses in our psyche. The distinction here is, while that is correct and true, and probably a large portion of what we're seeing, people living in cities, as you've pointed out before, breathing in brake dust every day. When you live in these cities, you are inundated endlessly with environmental toxins, which are attacking your senses and your mind and your body. But I will draw that distinction from the other point that I'm making as well, which I do say is with respect to your point, and it's a good point. The other point, of course, being people who are raised and being poisoned by false information, which creates a worldview where they genuinely believe that cops, for instance, murdered 20,000 unarmed black men in 1 year, when the number was actually 9 out of 300 million interactions. They live in a world of fabrication, a false reality. When someone is suffering from schizophrenia, and there is something broken in their brain, where they believe that they literally hear voices and they see things that aren't there. Mm-hmm. We prescribe drugs that we believe will stop those symptoms and help them connect more with reality. There's varying degrees of success, perhaps. But there's a big difference between someone who has just seen 800 times posts on Facebook saying white supremacists will kill you over and over and over again. CNN and ABC, trusted news sources saying the right is more dangerous. There's no medication for that.
No, I think less is more a lot of times too, is like reduce the things you're putting into yourself so that you can be more clear. And there are people I've seen like snapping out of this narrative in the last day or two where they're like, I can't be on the left anymore. This is insane that you would celebrate this. And people that are highly disembodied don't normally have those epiphanies.
Right, because they've silenced their own brains. You know, they've silenced their own measure of cognition. But I think what you're saying about people snapping out of it takes something, right? It takes something for people to get out of this mindset. Like, I was raised pretty liberal, and I went to, you know, all the liberal schools and all the, you know, I was in the arts, for goodness sake. Like, it's the most liberal area of our culture. And it took trans for me to be like, wait a second, that's not right. Men aren't women, no matter what you do, no matter what you cut off or ingest or how you look or put on lipstick, you're not a woman. And so it takes something for people to be like, and then after that, I was like, oh, wait, if that's wrong, what else is wrong? Oh, all of these other things are completely wrong, you know, are completely misidentified in our culture and are made up. But we have a situation now where not only are kids medicated and disassociated from themselves and started at a young age so that, you know, and the same is true with the puberty blockers and the cross-sex hormones. It messes you up to the point where you don't grow up into the person who you are. You grow up into something else, something that's sort of malformed. But like, so what happens is, if that's what happens to you and you grow up this way and you're constantly scrolling and you never take in, and you're constantly navel gazing, like you were saying, you know, you're constantly like looking inside yourself for all the truth of the universe, you know, and your school is not great, which we know our education system is the pits right now. Where are you getting something? And nobody's taking their kids to church, you know? You don't see a lot of that. I mean, you like, my church is packed, which is awesome. It's the best church I've ever been to. But you're doing all of this to this kid. You're never feeding them Charles Dickens. You're never feeding them just some carrots and hummus. You're never feeding them their own, you know, ability to explore the world. And you're just constantly feeding them a heavy dose of their own inner monologue. Like, that's devastating. They're getting no fresh input. It's just all this closed circuit.
I think a lot of this, when I think about my own trajectory, because my kind of awakening was that you had, my equivalent was waking up to this, the fact that I'd basically been indoctrinated into a psychiatric framework for understanding myself. So that was my first onion layer that then began questioning many other onion layers. And when I think what the challenge here that you're getting at is, my own waking up process was a completely internally sourced aha moment. No one could have, I mean, the information was around me for years that there's no such thing as a chemical imbalance. And like Tim, even schizophrenia, even these serious diagnoses, it might sound shocking, but to date, there is zero evidence that even like bipolar was my main label, schizophrenia, bipolar, these serious labels, that there's actually any measurable pathology that's causing them. So like the indoctrination goes deep. We're so trained to think it. No one could have forced me to see that. No one could have coerced me into changing my mind. Like you said, Libby, it's this like internal aha moment that you have within yourself. And
you had that rock bottom, right? When you got involuntarily hospitalized and you realized your freedoms were getting taken away. And that sent you on a new trajectory where you're just like, this is not for me.
That is what woke me up, was realizing this system I'd been turning to for help for all these years, to care for me, is actually a system of control. I just hadn't seen it before because I had always said yes. And now that I'm saying no, I'm literally having my civil liberties stripped away from me and my bodily integrity violated by a drug I don't want to take. And I do think that's sometimes it is a forcing mechanism that is traumatic, that does wake you up. And you obviously don't want that to have to be what everyone has to go through to wake up. But
it often is, right? You need to have a rock bottom moment. Like if you have an ideology or a way of looking at the world that does not serve you and your life begins to suffer. And I mean, this could be thinking that, you know, half of America is racist and because of that, you don't get along with them. I mean, that's going to have an impact on your life. It's going to have an impact on your work. And ultimately, things don't work out for you. And when things don't work out for you, you become unhappy. And I guess one of the problems that we have with that is people aren't reflecting on these ways of moving through the world that aren't helping, they can then go to a doctor and just take a medication, and they can numb themselves to the fact that their life isn't working out, rather than looking at why.
Yeah, they said when someone was saying that if you spend a lot of your time doing easy things, you become a prey animal. You become in like video games. If you're just always doing like no risk things, you become. And I've noticed with drugs, if I've ever smoked pot, I'm like, what my main focus is feeling better. It's about my body and my self feeling. When I'm not, I care about my environment. How can I make my environment better? And if you make your environment better, you will feel better in the long run. That's what people are missing. They're chasing the high. They're chasing the feeling. And sometimes you just got to hit rock bottom. You got to fall apart. You got to break. And then you can rebuild.
Pain is good. You need that pain as direction in your life. And that's why we have such a big problem with just numbing it out all the time. This is the smoke alarm going off in your brain saying, hey, something is not working and you need to fix it.
You know what's funny? You mentioned change your environment, and you're talking about the smoke alarm. And years ago, I went to my doctor because I was having like a horrible time sleeping. I just could not sleep. I would fall asleep, then I would wake up, and I just could not sleep. And it had been like 2 months, 3 months of like just terrible sleep. And my doctor was like, okay, well, why don't we get you some Ambien, just like a heavy duty sleeping pill. So then I start taking the Ambien, and, it was sort of fun because you get loopy, but I was like taking this Ambien, and then the same thing would happen, except instead of waking up all night, I was having nightmares all night. And I would wake up and I'd be like, oh, that's not better. Nightmares aren't better. And so after a week of that, I went to Sleepy's over the weekend and I bought all new pillows. And I literally, now I just buy new pillows if I'm having trouble sleeping. I never had that problem again. I went back to sleep. I was like, oh, perfect, comfy, sleep. I wake up, my covers are all smooth, haven't moved.
And that was like an easy fix. But imagine if the problem like that you weren't sleeping was there was an issue in your relationship, right? Or there was an issue at work that really needed to be addressed and you were ruminating on it, and you go and see a doctor and they go, Libby, it's the chemical imbalance, take the Ambien. That problem just like festers there and it doesn't go away. And then you're hooked on a drug instead of actually getting to the root of what was going on.
It's not because you're eating ice cream at midnight. That's not the issue.
And sometimes, I worry this there's been talk recently about transgenderism, the medications, and violence, really. And I know a couple of weeks ago there was this horrific attack at the Catholic Church
in Minneapolis.
In Minneapolis, where was it Robin or
it was Robert. Yeah. Who called himself Robin Westman.
Yeah. Went and did that, and then there were these notes about regretting transitioning. And to me, I just see that as the end outcome. You have someone who is confused, who ends up getting cheerleaded into transitioning, who knows what kind of hormone medications they were exposed to and what kind of psychiatric medications they were exposed to. And at the end, they become so bitter and angry with the world, like this bad ideology, and the fact that no one ever tried to direct this person back away from that, and kind of just, I imagine this person getting cheerleaded through transitioning and then onto medication and then just becoming so unstable, they take it out on society. I mean, it's just...
Not just regret, but not only did he have regret, but he was embarrassed that he'd ever done it in the first place and didn't see a way out, didn't see a way to save face and get out of it.
Yeah, and this might sound a little cheesy, but I do think that this is where storytelling becomes so important, because that sense of hopelessness is too late for me. Like when I think about it in the context of people who are waking up to, being psychiatrized is the term I like to use. And you realize these 2 decades of these meds I've been on, have they permanently damaged me? Am I ever going to have a chance? You need stories of people who've gotten through. You need stories of people who've had the same experience, come through the other side. I mean, it's why I wrote my book, and it's why I think when you speak as a psychiatrist, when I speak as a former patient, framing it in our own personal journey, like you, Libby, talking about your own journey, I think that's what enables, like to me, it's not going to be information and science and data and facts that changes people's minds. It's going to be helping people connect or even reconnect with their own hearts, which happens through telling stories. And I think that's a really important, and you know, that people like Charlie, like people who are who care so deeply about bringing people together to share about their own perspectives, their own experiences, to create space where you can hear someone talking about their own journey through life, their own belief system. It's in those kinds of encounters that the opportunity to have your own aha moment, your own shift, your own, you know, inspiration to actually change your mind, to evolve, to grow. I think it sounds cheesy, but to me, it's like that's where the power is.
In the modern age,
there's a
particularly,
reason it's cheesy. It's cheesy because it's real.
and it's amplified in the modern age with mass media, because if 5 people sit around and each give their personal anecdotes, in a day, 150 years ago, it would have happened, blink of an eye. Maybe there would have been some spiritual ramification. Now with internet video, it's persistent. People for 100 years will listen to that and remember. So as it can go bad with mass media and mass formation, you can mass form it into a really good mindset.
Well,
point.
I just want to say this, though. I think we're at like an inflection point where society is almost like post-apocalyptic right now. Like, I don't even know if there is a way to even go back with like the access to pornography on the internet. I mean, now that we have the internet, like we're done. I mean, I don't know how a kid can even grow up and not like, I guess, be aged at such a rapid rate that doesn't even like match up with their puberty. So I think a lot of kids are mentally ill from the internet, and then they say when you start smoking marijuana, it actually stunts your maturity level at the age you start smoking marijuana. So like we have a society of kids that are all on weed, all looking at porn, and it's just a dark world. And I'm not trying to be hopeless, but it's really hard to be
I want to
successful
ask
in such a bad world.
I want to ask: is there a medical term to describe a developed psychosis, a developed delusion?
Like one that you come up with.
No. I'm saying if you're surrounded by 100 people and they just keep telling you that Santa Claus at any moment is going to jump out and stab you, and then you start telling medical professionals that you're terrified and shaking and have anxiety because you know Santa's coming for you, is there a word to describe that?
Delusional disorder.
Even though it was something told to you that was so if a news anchor says, "Watch out," literally to 1 million people, Santa Claus is coming to get you, and then they start believing it, we call that standard delusional disorder.
Or reality, if enough people believe it.
Well, that's my point to what Alex is saying. We're dealing with a couple different phenomena. I've described this one in great detail, that in the end of the 2000s, Facebook switched from reverse chronological to algorithmic, meaning that we used to just see the posts of people we chose to see. Facebook, realizing that the amount of pages and friends a person had become too great and the feed moved too quickly, decided that to keep people on the page, they needed to prioritize posts with more engagement, and thus created the algorithmic social platform. What ended up happening was, if I post, I'm going to the grocery store, nobody sees it. If you post a video of police beating a black man, literally everybody sees it. There were 10-year-olds at the time, and this is true. This did happen. So let me describe it a little bit more broadly. There were children at the time who were not supposed to be on Facebook, but of course were. Maybe they were 12, maybe they were 13. I think 13-year-olds are allowed to be on the platform. Facebook prioritized showing high engagement posts. So they began just showing nothing but police brutality videos. In fact, at the time, even Alex Jones and Paul Joseph Watson largely were covering the police brutality angle, as it was and if you were government critical or concerned about police overreach, it applied to you. And if you were left-aligned, anti-racist or whatever, which was not as prominent, it applied to you. There were websites that emerged, such as Mike.com, which was a Ron Paul libertarian love revolution site. And when they posted about police brutality, because it did align with libertarian values, the bigger reaction they got was from those who opposed racism. And so initially you post police brutality, you'll get X views. You then post a video of racism, you get Y views. But if you post a video about racist police brutality, you get XY. It is not, in fact, X plus Y, it is X times Y. And the reason why is the way the algorithms all work is, in the early days of Reddit, the way their algorithm worked was for those not familiar with Reddit, you can make a post and people can choose up or down. Mm-hmm. You choose down, it disappears. If you choose up, it moves up. The first 10 votes in the first minute are equal to, and I think this was a while ago, 100 votes in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So what ends up happening is the algorithm is an exponential return rate. If there are 10 people who pay attention to police brutality and 10 people who pay attention to racism, and then you post racist police brutality, 20 people see it, it is a rapidly exponential boost in the algorithm, resulting in a series of early websites dedicated just to police brutality. In fact, one website cracked the top 500 websites in the world, literally only posting police brutality. It was like 430. And there are people there making six figures to millions of dollars. And all they would do every day is dig through archives to post and repost police brutality. Now, for a discerning adult, eventually you say, I get it. But for a child entering the world for the first time, the political world, on social media, the only thing you see in your feed, every video is a cop beating a black man. Now, in reality, these videos were spread out over a decade. These videos were a handful this year, a handful this year. They weren't always a cop murdering somebody, and there certainly are many videos of cops getting into fights with people. People who are posting these videos began to realize it doesn't matter what's true, it matters what we can post. We saw the rise of fake news websites that would just make things up. One of the viral stories was that BLM protesters blocked an ambulance carrying a dying young teenage girl. Got millions of views, was fake. They just literally made it up. But they made, 10 grand or whatever writing a story like that. This was what social media was. And so for someone who is 12 or 13, going on social media for the first time, for the next 5 years, the only thing they see, and I mean that hyperbolically, typically, majority of what they see will be, and I mean this sincerely, either police brutality videos against black people or people getting married, which were the highest profile of the highest algorithmic search or posts. So if someone wrote, I'm getting married and having a kid, you would appear at the top of everyone's feed because it had typically would result in high engagement. People would exploit this by writing, I am getting married and having a kid. Psych, no, I'm not. I did that so that you would see this. We're having a party tomorrow. Come hang out. Mm-hmm. Now imagine what happens to a 13-year-old from 13 to 15 being told every single day, every time they open the app and scroll, that cops are just murdering black people. You get the George Floyd riots. Yeah. It is not that their brains are broken in some way. It is that their brains have been programmed in this way by the algorithms. I do not believe, and I'm not a medical expert, I do not believe it is possible to deprogram a child who has dealt with developmental years wired half their life in this direction. And I will add to this, right now we are dealing with the ongoing, what we call ElsaGate, which started in 2018, has never stopped. They claimed they stopped it, but it's not. Now there's the Jackson Agatha conspiracy that's going on where, what is it, The Great Circus or something? I don't know these shows. I don't watch these kid shows.
Wait, ElsaGate's like the child prawn that's on YouTube?
ElsaGate was when people started making half-an-hour-long videos with no words, dressed like Elsa, Spider-Man, and Joker, chasing each other around. Elsa was pregnant. They would inject her with giant syringes, and it resulted in algorithmically generated content from people in India to make money of children eating feces out of toilets, of Peppa Pig having sex. To this day, we thought it ended, but it never did. To this day, there are videos of Sonic the Hedgehog being forcefully impregnated by machines that are being given to children on the YouTube Kids app. So when we...
Wait, Tim, there's nudity on YouTube. If you type in naked yoga...
Yes, of course.
It's insane.
And they argue it's educational.
Yeah.
YouTube has videos explaining how to use sex toys for children. This is not an exaggeration.
Well, so does the school system in Vancouver.
Indeed it does. But the point that I'm making is not about what is overt to an adult. The point I'm making is that there is a 6-year-old right now whose mother has given him a tablet, and he is watching videos of Sonic the Hedgehog, and I am not exaggerating, being grabbed by metallic arms, having an arm jammed into his body to impregnate him. And there are videos of conveyor belts where they attach large butt cheeks to Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, and what's her name? Rosa or whatever. I don't know the character. I only know Sonic and Knuckles and Tails because that's the game that I had. Children are watching these things. When we talk about Facebook blasting people with police brutality videos, or how about these memes that are lying about Charlie Kirk, for instance? A 15-year-old 10 years ago saw nothing but lies from the left that generate content. The fake news epidemic and misinformation they warned us about has never been dealt with on the left because they were willing to ban the right, but not the left. Even Twitch to this day.
And that's the big problem. Places like YouTube, they have a liberal bias. And so you're going to sit there in your echo chamber digesting all of this content about, Charlie Kirk's so racist, Charlie Kirk is against, transgender folks. Matt Walsh, all of these, all of these folks, and it will radicalize them against it, because opposing points of view, like when you're in a left-leaning, like if you're a YouTube or something like that, and your content moderators are all left-leaning, the other side is getting shut down. It is getting throttled, and so that's why you get people radicalized like that, and they're just going to hear, we need to go out and we need to fight against the conservative influences because transgender people are dying. And it's because of them. It's because of, Catholics. And you get this school shooting that happened the church shooting that happened 2 weeks ago. And so, yes, it gets views, but it is radicalizing people in this really dark and twisted way.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon. So subscribe and come hang out.